Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, I hope you hit the subscribe button. And for those of you who have subscribed, thank you so much for your support. Today I'm going to be talking about the unsolved murder of Jackaleen Patricia Dyck, a 23-year-old single mother of two young girls. Jackaleen was recently separated and living alone with her two daughters in a house on 240 Bowman Avenue, Winnipeg, Manitoba. On the night of October 3rd, Jackaleen had decided to go out for the evening, along with her sister, her brother-in-law, and a friend of theirs. They went to the local racetrack, the Assiniboine Downs. They left the house. It was around 7:30 that night. Jackaleen's nephew was staying with her for the weekend, so he babysat the girls. Jackaleen, along with her friend Gary, had returned home around 10:45 p.m. They had stayed up late watching a movie with her nephew, going to bed sometime after midnight. Her friend Gary had stayed the night and slept on the couch. That Saturday morning on October 4th at 4 a.m., it is believed that two or more people broke into Jackaleen's home and crept into her bedroom while she and her two tiny daughters, her nephew, and her friend Gary, who slept on the couch, were all asleep. At the time of the incident, Jackaleen was 23, her daughters, Jody, were 6, and Denise were 5. The suspects must have started the attack on the sleeping Jackaleen immediately upon entering her bedroom. Someone must have covered Jackaleen's mouth to muffle her screams while she was attacked and fought for her life and for the safety of her daughters. As hard as she fought, she was no match for her attacker, and she was brutally stabbed to death. There were marks on Jackaleen's face, bruising around her mouth, indicating someone had put something over it to muffle her cries. The attackers had to have had bite marks and or scratches on them, along with having their hair pulled out from Jackaleen fighting hard to fight back. There was blood everywhere. It took a few people to hold her down. She tried to fight back. She tried hard. We do know that Jackaleen's friend Gary heard her frantic calls for help and saw a shadowy figure, possibly male, flee out the back door of the house from her bedroom. Upon entering her room, her friend found that she had been stabbed numerous times, 28 in total, and was bleeding profusely. Winnipeg ambulance was summoned and arrived shortly thereafter. She was transported with life-threatening condition to the Winnipeg Health Science Center, where she succumbed to her injuries a short time after. Her case remains unsolved. Over the years, her daughter Denise has tried to get copies of her mother's case from the police. She's been left knowing that the suspect is known, but no arrests have been made. The evidence says multiple people were restraining Jackaleen, holding her down, putting their hands over her mouth to muffle her screams. Jackaleen was trying to fight two or more people, fighting the person restraining her, muffling her cries, and the other person or persons who ultimately killed her. Jackaleen had pressure marks over her face. Something was pressed hard enough over her mouth to leave bruising. There were enough people in the room to hold her down and keep her muffled. The police said that she had put up one hell of a fight. Officers found no signs of forced entry the night that she was killed. They ruled out robbery and sexual assault as motives. They said that the severity of the attack, it appears that the crime was very personal in nature and directed specifically towards Jackaleen. It would have taken approximately 11 seconds to stab and slash a person 28 times. That's as long as they didn't fight back. But we know Jackaleen fought back, and she fought back hard. In the weeks prior to her death, it is said that Jackaleen had been attacked many times by the suspects, having to fight back to defend herself every single time. But she wasn't able to fight back hard enough to save her 6-month pregnancy. Jackaleen's unborn son was killed after she was attacked in her own backyard that summer of 1980. The loss of her baby was weeks before the murder. She still had a bit of a pregnant belly at the time of her death. Jackaleen had also been the target of other criminal acts, including damage to her house when a beer bottle was thrown through her bedroom window. There was damage to her vehicle, and they were getting harassing phone calls, threatening her life. The caller would tell her that they were going to kill her. They made their intentions clear that she was going to die. At one time, it was believed that the suspect or suspects were friends of Jackaleen. The police were called, but only sometimes did they show up. It would be hours later, or sometimes not at all. Well, it was also speculated that the murder may have been related to Jackaleen's marital breakup. Her ex-husband, Craig Dyck, was nearly 800 kilometers away in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan at the time. Money was tight and pressure of having young children weighed on the young couple, and they separated not long before Jackaleen was killed. Following her death, her daughters Jody and Denise went to live with relatives, as their father Craig was in a new relationship, living in a new city. Sadly, 2 years later, in 1982, Jody was killed in a car accident, leaving Denise to feel scared and alone. Nobody should have to go through what I did. I was an orphan child. Jackaleen's parents went as far as offering a reward for any information to catch their daughter's killer. Nothing can bring her back, but our minds will be at rest if they get this killer, her father had said. She was in the midst of the divorce with her husband, Craig, who was 27 at the time. She had accused him of adultery with the woman whom he later married. The killer somehow had access to her home, and there were no signs of forced entry at the time of the murder. Jackaleen's friend Gary, who was also considered a suspect, was later cleared. Denise has said that horrific night has created a ripple effect in her life. She has always felt as if things would be torn apart at any moment, so she has clung tightly to unhealthy relationships, even if it wasn't good for her. When she was asked in an interview what she remembers from that night, she had said that she remembers waking up hearing her mother screaming. She remembers hiding under her blanket with her sister Jody until the sirens drowned out any other sounds. I remember Mom going out. I don't really personally remember much from that day. Frustrated, she states, I was there. Why can't I remember what happened? I believe that it was over her breakup. She had since learned that her mom and siblings were abused by her father and left home at an early age. Mom had a tough street awareness. Along with her having to grow up so fast, she ended up meeting people she shouldn't have met. 3 days before, my mom was at her sister's place with us girls. Somebody had kicked in our back door. The door and the frame, it was all clearly meant to say that nothing will hold us back. The back door was completely smashed off the door frame 2 days prior, so the door wasn't in the greatest of shape. The killers were stalking and terrorizing her for months, days, even hours before they killed her. She said she watched her mom get attacked a few times before she was tragically taken from her. She remembers a loving, caring, outgoing, compassionate mom. I was only 5. I remember a happy family. I live with that every single day of my life, Denise has said in an interview. My ideal situation is finding out the truth. I'd love to learn the truth about who she was, even gain a better understanding of who I am. And I am searching for the truth. I am searching to find out what part my dad may have played in my mother's murder. I'm trying to get answers to everything. Denise, who was 5 at the time, states, a day does not go by where it is not on my mind. I'm trapped. She remains active in looking for clues for her mother's killing. I truly believe that we know who killed her. I think that the police just can't get the concrete evidence they need. Over the last 42 years, there have been many tips called in regards to Jackaleen's murder. Now, a lot of them have just been, obviously insignificant, that never came to anything. But there was one tip that Denise, her daughter, believes was somewhat significant. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, the police do not believe that it was significant enough. However, if we do believe that this tip is somewhat true, then it changes the dynamic of what happened that night. The gentleman who called in this tip, his nickname was Teddy Bear. He was a cab driver in the 80s. Now, according to him, Jackaleen didn't go to bed that night after watching her movie. She actually went, according to this caller, Teddy Bear, went to the LaSalle Hotel over on Narran Avenue in Winnipeg, Manitoba for last call drinks. She met up with Teddy Bear and a friend of his, and she invited them back to her place for some coffee. Now, last call in Winnipeg, Manitoba is around 1 a.m. in the morning. So now it goes according to Teddy Bear, Jackaleen, Teddy Bear, and a male friend of his are in her living room. She gets a knock on the window. She leaves. She comes back in a panic, stating that her husband is home and back in town. Now, according to Teddy Bear in his tip, he stated that Jackaleen came rushing back in, stating that her ex-husband was back in town and that they had to leave. She rushed them out the door, and as they were leaving, Teddy Bear stated that there was a couple of people coming into the home, warning him to get the heck out of there, or that he was going to get what was coming to her. Now, according to that tip, like I stated, it changes the dynamic. So instead of Jackaleen being asleep in her room, it is now that somebody has come to her door, that she's awake, that there's other people in the house. This could be why the police didn't believe that this was a true tip. It could be that they're looking for more significant evidence. We're not too sure. But the one thing that we do know is Denise, her daughter, believes that they know who the killer is. What we do know is that around the time of her murder, she was in the midst of a divorce. Now, it could have been the reason that it all happened because it was so personal in nature. We don't know. We won't know until we have that final piece. And of course, no daughter would want to have either of their parents to be the one to be responsible for the other's demise. It's just unfathomable. She just wants questions answered. Being a 5-year-old little girl, going to bed one night when your world is fine, you, your sister, your mom, just living your life every day. Sure, there was struggles, there was issues, but everything was fine. And then all of a sudden you hear these screams. You're awoken in the middle of the night to basically a nightmare. To have a boogeyman come into your home and take your mom so brutally away from you and your sister, and then to be left so scared. Any normal person at any age would have mental issues, nightmares, and that's exactly what happened with Denise growing up. She ended up having PTSD. Who wouldn't? You're 5 years old. Your world is ripped apart from you. And then 2 short years later, your sister is taken from you in a horrible car accident. You're left completely alone. 7 years old and alone. She said she felt like an orphan because her dad did leave. He left. He abandoned his family. I'm not going to put it politely. He left his daughter to fend for herself in a world where you need parents. You need support. You need love. And she didn't grow up in the greatest environments. Because of everything that happened, she clung on to unhealthy relationships. She ended up with constant nightmares, night tremors. I can't imagine going to bed one night and having a boogeyman come into my home for real and take my mom. She's that little girl. She's been 5 years old for the last 42 years. All she wants is answers. If you have any little piece of information, please call Crime Stoppers or your local police. Let's give this little girl some peace. I think she's suffered long enough.